All right, Aleric, I want to ask you something that you've probably been asked before, but what is the biggest mistake that business owners make when they start with YouTube ads?
Honestly, the biggest mistake is not what a lot of people think. They always think it's the targeting, they think it's all the different buttons you need to push. But what it actually is not providing value in the ad. That's the biggest mistake because people are on YouTube to learn. They're actually watching content, they're looking to learn, they want to receive value and information. And the big mistake that people make is they have this classic ad. How many times have you seen this, Gabe, right? Where people are saying, hey, do you have this problem? Okay, well, go buy my thing or go book a call or I'll see you on this webinar. But it doesn't actually provide real value. And what we've found is any type of business, especially true with expert businesses, coaches, and consultants, but also services and products, whatever it happens to be, you want to educate why your service, product, coaching, consulting is the best fit for that person and how it's going to solve the problem. And if you can give people that value in the ad itself, they're going to know, like, and trust you so much more. And that means that they're going to actually go through the rest of the funnel and through the rest of the marketing process. So the biggest mistake is not what a lot of people think. It's actually it's not having value in the ads. And the way to fix that is by providing value in your ads.
I love that because yeah, like I've learned over the years the things that people react to in copy and social media posts, and like you're so much more of an expert in YouTube ads than I am right now. But if you can really give them some insight and give them the aha moment and like move them forward, then you're exactly right. They trust you more. And all sales is the transference of trust, right? Somebody trusts that it's going to solve their problem, and we've definitely got to touch that, up front with the process. And so, man, not what I thought you would answer, honestly, because there's so much technical, there's so much technical aspects in targeting and so much that we can get into with YouTube. But you're 100% right, and that's why I love talking to you, because you always bring it back to the most foundational principles that apply across the board. Because what you just said isn't just YouTube ads; that's every advertising platform that we want to use, which is awesome. So, well, I really appreciate you being on the show today, Aleric. You're the founder and CEO of AdOutreach, and your story is always fascinating to me. We met years ago now in some different mastermind groups, and just always got along well. And I love how you started out at a really young age as an entrepreneur, which feels similar to my story. But I'm curious, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur? And, because you've shared it before. I've read your story, like you started out, which you can touch on, which it sounded more like play and fun. But when did you realize that you were an entrepreneur and that you were going to be a business owner like you are today?
Oh, I appreciate that. I love, like, diving deep and kind of going back with that. A lot of people heard the story around my YouTube channel and starting that when I was 12, and I'll definitely dive into that. But I'll actually give you one that I haven't really shared, because you asked me the specific question: when did I know I was going to be, an entrepreneur, business owner? And the YouTube channel is the answer a lot of people might think, because I've shared it a lot, and I'll dive into that. But actually, I even had the classic, it's very cliche, but the lemonade stand when I was, very young. And I would do that when I was, like 8, 9, 10 years old. I had a lemonade stand. And it's actually really interesting because it went a little bit beyond just selling the lemonade. So we were, so I grew up back in Massachusetts. Now I'm in Austin, Texas, but I grew up out there. And, we were on a street that led to, a swim and tennis club. Now we weren't a part of that, but we kind of had the standard kind of middle class, like, upbringing. So we were kind of in that area, but not really part of some of the. And so anyways, so we were on that street. And in the summer, I would sell lemonade to all the people walking down the street to go to, go swim or go do whatever. And so I was lemonade and like a cookie and all that stuff. Actually, side note, it's kind of funny because I live in an apartment now, but there was a kid in the apartment complex that was selling lemonade. And of course, I'm going to support that kid, and the
Yes.
it was $5. You got to think about inflation. I was selling lemonade for like 75 cents, cookies for 50 cents, both for $1. And now it's $5 for one glass of lemonade, which I gladly do that, and I'll give a tip too. But it's just so funny. Anyway,
Gone up. I stopped
I
too.
know.
Like,
Yeah,
holy cow.
I know. I'm like, wow. And anyways, that's a funny side note. But basically, so I had that lemonade stand and I was selling that, and so the fall rolled around. I remember one of the years the fall rolled around, and I would always sell to all the people going up and down the street, but not as many people were doing that. And then the people that were going there to play tennis were driving, not necessarily walking down the street. And so I was like, how can I sell more lemonade? I want to sell more lemonade. And my parents also talked to me, by the way, about profit as well. So they were like, all right, hey, here's how much you're spending on the, you know, the lemons and the sugar and these things, you know. So I actually learned early there's a difference between revenue and profit. I know we both talked about that, and the importance
Yes.
of that, and, you know, the difference between revenue and profit, and, you know, and really recognizing that. But anyways, but basically, I was like, how can I sell lemonade? And so it's the fall. Well, what do people do in the fall? Well, so I was like, wait a second. People go to yard sales on the weekend, because I wanted to sell it on the weekend when I wasn't in school. And so I you know, get the newspaper. I look at yard sale here, yard sale there. And I had already been like knocking on doors to sell popcorn as like a Boy Scout. So I went up and down like the street to the people that had yard sales. And I just like knock on the door and be like, hey, I saw you got a yard sale coming up. Can I sell my lemonade there? And you can have as much lemonade as you want for free. That was like my pitch. And I was like, you know, 8, 9, 10. Like, so funny. Sometimes you look back and you're like, because, you know, it was me, but it's like, you think it's like, it's kind of like, you know, younger version, different version. You're just like, wow, you know. So I would go. And that was my early marketing lesson. Go where the people are. If they're not walking down the street in the fall, where are they? They're at a yard sale. What's my irresistible offer to get my lemonade stand at the yard sale? Well, it's, hey, people are going to stay longer. They'll be refreshed. They're going to like that there's lemonade there. And you, as the owner, have as much lemonade as you want. And that was my pitch. And so I would then go and sell at different lemonade stands. And I think that's really the moment that I was just like, this is fun. I really like that. And it was kind of early marketing lesson. So, yeah.
That's brilliant, man. Something that is, man, such a huge pattern. I always lose track of episode counts, but I've interviewed, I don't know, 150 plus entrepreneurs or so on the show. And what's always fascinating to me is so many of us did door knocking and cold calling and like did the grind early on. And you're right, like you look back at your younger self and sometimes I'm like, what the hell was the matter with me? or how did most of the time I'm glad I wasn't scared or self-conscious, which I probably would be now comparatively. I just think there's so much value in like really getting out there and putting your offer face to face, human to human. Because I always tell people, like, when they're in startup mode, I always tell them you can run ads to see if your offer works. But if you're really early stage and you're pre-revenue, basically, go out, meet with people, sell it face to face, because you'll learn very quickly what resonates and what doesn't. And it's cheaper, faster, and you learn so much more. So I love your origin story of being an entrepreneur and taking the lemonade stand far beyond what I think most people probably do. And you're figuring out co-marketing and partners and like, you know, you notice that the traffic is slowing or changing and you move somewhere else, which probably helps you out today, that kind of principle approach.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting. Exactly. All the similarities of different entrepreneurs, you know, all different ways that we kind of approached it, but a lot of the same foundational elements. So yeah, I love it.
And so then talk to us about your YouTube channel, because, you know, in hearing your story so many times and, you know, having read about you, you went from screwing around online is what it sounded like to making money. And then I love when you share, talk about that you told one of your teachers how much you were making and you were making more than them. So that's always an interesting place to be. I remember being a teenager and making thousands of dollars a month, and my friends always wanted to come hang out with me because I would take them out and we'd go out and eat and do whatever, and it was a lot of fun at that age. But talk to me about that part of your story.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, basically I started out with my YouTube channel. So I was filming videos even around that time when I was younger too, and I was, you know, doing different videos with friends and things. But when the iPhone came out, I got that. I was like, oh, this is so cool. There's all these apps on here. So I started filming videos on the apps, and I originally published it on my regular YouTube channel, which I had some like sketch videos. I've since kind of unlisted all those, but you know, I had these different videos, and then that video started to get popular. Oh, here are the best apps for the iPhone. People were watching. It wasn't just family and friends. So I said, well, you know, I'd love to build a channel around this. So I created a channel called App Find, right? So it's just like, you know, finding apps. And I started talking about the best mobile apps, you know, and I started getting more people watching the videos, more subscribers, more people viewing. And then the channel really started to take off when I did a complete beginner's guide. This was fast forward a few years, you know, to the iPhone 4. I did a complete beginner's guide. I got over 1 million views, and I had all these people were watching it. And I was basically just doing a step-by-step hour-long guide. and the reason I did it that year is also my dad got an iPhone for the first time, and then also my grandmother did as well. And so I was trying to teach them how to use an iPhone. And so I basically was teaching them, but then I created a video, and people loved that video. And that video basically was the first one that went viral. And it goes right back to what I was talking about before, is providing value. I was teaching for free an hour-long like masterclass how to use your iPhone, basically. So,
Yeah.
YouTube.
It's really interesting timing, because I just totally by chance am reading a book called The Anxious Generation that talks about how smartphones have come out and like obviously changed society. And it's a little bit pessimistic in the book compared to my view, but they talk about how, I think it was like 08, 09 when I think it was 08 the App Store came out, maybe if I'm remembering correctly. And then like 6 months later, there's 300,000 or 400,000 apps, or a bunch of them, and then a year later, there's 1 million apps in both the App Store and then Google Play, because Google's trying to keep up. And it's amazing to me, like, to hear your story and so many that I've heard, where right place, right time for sure, and like you were leading with value, like really solving people's problems. There's a whole market of people that know they want new smartphones, devices, and they know they want apps, but they have no idea how to do it. And so as you look back at it now, were there any other factors or things that you were aware of? Or I've had plenty of experiences in my entrepreneurial journey. I was just lucky, is how I just figure if I work hard enough, I'll get lucky more often, is my theory. But as you look back at that, like the timing and how you led with value, where did that come from for you? Was any of that intentional, or would you say some of it you kind of fell into? I'm kind of curious how that all came together for you.
So I think it was a combination, and that's a really good question too. So the iPhone had come out, and it was actually kind of funny that the story which is basically my parents also didn't know that the iPhone had like games on it and stuff, because I wasn't really allowed to play like video games, and and it's like I wanted this iPhone, right? And so I got it. And then they're like, wait a second, there's games on here. I'm like, oh, I'll be creative with it. I'll go and I'll do videos showing people the best games and best apps and stuff like that. And so basically that was kind of like one of the early pieces. But I also it was so cool seeing people watch the videos and really like it. And then the beginner's guide, it was kind of a lucky break that I thought to do that, but it was also something that was necessary, right? Like, that was a video that was sent to my, grandmother. It was, one that, was like kind of articulating, okay, here's all the things that you can do with your iPhone. I had these affiliate apps. So I'd teach people how to download an app using an affiliate link. We're going to show you how to download an app. Everybody make sure to follow along. At one point, we had so I was an affiliate for an app called Ibotta, and at one point, which is like a grocery receipt, like shopping scanning app or whatever. At one point, their team like reached out, like, "What are you doing to get all these all these referrals and all these people?" And so I told them that, and they loved that. But at that point, they basically said we were the largest source of non-internal like marketing for them. So basically, like their biggest like affiliate. They didn't have leaderboards or anything, but so anyways, it was very interesting. But and so I just got into that, and it was just providing value, but then also experimenting, right? Testing things.
Yeah.
Some things worked, some things didn't work. I tried to launch like an Apple News show, like a lot of people, and that wasn't as popular, because not as many people were popular about like every leak and rumor of of the iPhone, but people loved all the different. And it's even the same thing. The funny thing is the channel's called App Find, and I created a ton of app content, but it's like the 20% of the content that yield 80% of the results. I will say 20% of our content were these complete beginner's guides, but that was 80% of our views. Whereas I was spending a ton of time. And so that's a lesson I actually didn't learn until later on, when I really started learning like 80-20 principle and some of these things. But for a long time, I was doing a lot of videos on apps, and that was like the core element of the channel. But the actual popular content were beginner's guides, which now I actually have a full-time YouTube content creator out in California, a friend of mine, Justin, who we were both YouTubers like a decade ago. We knew each other for a long time, and so I brought him in, and now we basically do a complete beginner's guide every week. So on just different,
Wow,
and so the channel's still going to this day.
that's super cool, man. And there's something like really genius that I think is easy to miss, especially when we get into business, we get farther down the road. Like there's so much complexity to running a business. There's so much like to being an entrepreneur. But the brilliance of what you started with is that you made something really valuable for for someone very specific. Like you mentioned your grandmother a few times here. And so as you're creating this, and you mentioned, I think, another family member, as you're creating that, you had a really specific person in mind. And that's something that has helped me over the years because I've recorded a lot of video, not as much as you, I don't think, but lots and lots of video over the years, and done lots of podcasts and done lots of things. And when I struggle in creating content, I think I'm talking to a large audience, and that's where my head gets all screwed up and I'm going the wrong direction. When my content really lands, I'm writing for one specific person, so I can pick, an ideal client I have that definitely has this problem, or I can think of, a family member, things like that. And I think that really personalizes the content, and it also, for me, keeps me on track with like, what am I going to talk about and what am I not going to talk about? Because the longer you're doing something, the more of an expert you become. And it's, for me anyway, it's easy to like really bloat everything I'm talking about and covering and go too deep, too far. And that's not actually helpful. And it's not valuable when you share too much, which is definitely something that I struggle with. So I think that's brilliant that you chose a specific person to create it for. And here years and years later, you still have an amazing channel running just from that good experiment and good idea.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm curious, I want to talk about is as you talk about in your story before, and we chatted, like you blew up, you had that channel go, you obviously made good affiliate money, and then you shared about how you got paid your first kind of partnership deal or sponsorship to promote an app, and that went extremely well. And then a short time later, if I remember right, you got offered a 6-figure job with stock options and said no. And so, like, one, I'm curious how old you were when you got that offer. And then secondly, like, what was the mindset behind that? Because clearly a good decision. Like, we can look at that now. But how did you weigh that decision in the moment? Because clearly, somebody found like, wow, Aleric's super talented at this. He can bring a ton of value. And I love the line on your website. You decided you didn't want to be somebody else's knight. You wanted to be your own king of your own business, which I love. But what was that moment like, and how did you walk through that decision? Because I'm assuming that was probably a lot of money when it was offered to you.
Yeah. It was very tempting. But at the same time, I knew that I really just wanted to, like you said, right, be the king of my own castle, even if I needed to build it brick by brick, right, and build it from the ground up. And basically, so that was so I had the YouTube channel was doing well. I also had hired like a script writer, video editor. So I was kind of pull myself out of some of the different things day to day on the channel side. And I was experimenting with YouTube ads. And then I had some apps that were sponsoring me. And I did an app sponsorship video. And then I promoted that with ads. They got a bunch of downloads. This is awesome. And then they had another, so it was actually a marketing company, like a performance marketing company that basically had kind of subcontracted me from that app developer. And then another, like, they said, okay, we need you to work with our biggest client, working with through us. And then all of a sudden I was managing like $1,000 a day, like ad spend on YouTube. One of my next, like, first campaigns, it was the second or third campaign. And it was just kind of hilarious, but that did so well that prompted them to call me up. And I was 19 at the time. So I was a sophomore in college, and they call me up and they're like, hey, Aleric, we want you to drop out of college, fly out to Silicon Valley, join our team, 6-figure stock options. Eventually, because they called me back. So I had they called me back and tried to reoffer, and they on the reoffer, they made it really clear, like, you can still have your YouTube channel too, like do whatever you want on the channel on the side. But we want you to be full-time with this. And they were a team, of a lot of people in their 20s and other people that had dropped out from college. So it was like, hey, you're one of us. Come join us. Maybe I was still on the younger side at that time, but they were really trying to get me to go out there. They had raised several rounds of funding, and it was public. So I was looking at it like, oh, XYZ millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars they raised. So it's a tempting thing. But I knew that like instead of going and being the knight in their castle, I wanted to build this myself. And I also knew that I kind of had a good thing going with, I kind of knew how to kind of put college on autopilot and still do well with that, but actually have time for my business. And eventually I actually like really hacked the system where at one point I just stacked all my classes in 2 days of the week.
Nice.
Yeah. So I basically just did classes from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, client calls, sales calls, team calls. And then I did, then I'm fast forwarding. So I decided
Yeah.
to go on to this myself, build this myself, my business. I actually went to, I was president of the Entrepreneurship Club. So I organized a trip out to Boston, and we went to HubSpot Inbound. And
Nice.
at that event, I saw the ClickFunnels booth. It's kind of funny to think like ClickFunnels advertising at HubSpot, but anyways, like they advertising there. And then that's when I signed up for ClickFunnels. And then, once you do that, you start getting all the online marketing, things. And then I joined my first mastermind. And I was doing YouTube ads. Everybody else was doing Facebook ads. So naturally, people are like, how are you doing YouTube ads? How are you getting better results? And then I realized, because I just started training people on how to do it, I love teaching too. So we have clients that we do it for them, but we also, started training businesses on YouTube ads, and that was like a fun experience. And I realized I had a talent for that. And so that's kind of so. Then fast forward, I then now had a small team. I stacked my classes so I could do all these calls, and then I would do like fulfillment work on Saturdays. I do my coursework on Sundays, and I basically was 7 days a week nonstop. But it was one of those times you look back, you're like, wow, I was like, just grinding and making it happen. So we all have moments like that as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And yeah, like as we've talked over the years, and like the thing I always feel is that I used to, I don't know, maybe over 10 years ago, I used to think there was a number that I would take and to walk away and work for somebody else. But the longer I do this, like there's no number to be able to chart your own path, have all the highs and all the lows and all the good lessons and all those things. But it's there's something really incredible about being free to wake up and decide what you're going to do that day. And chart your own course and build the business you want and pivot and adjust. Whereas like, obviously, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with working for a company, but I know for us, entrepreneurial types, it can feel like torture and imprisonment if we're locked into somebody else's plan. But man, what an amazing experience that must have been to do that, and also like honestly, really impressive. The way you described it, I'm assuming you finished college and graduated, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So
what kept you doing that? And I'm curious, like, did you study anything that carries over? What did like the value of doing the work? I think is always a value of doing something and learning the skill of doing that type of work. But does any of it carry through to what you do today? And then secondly, like, what kept you going in college when you're clearly making good money and building a business? What was the mindset behind that? That's not always the story I hear.
Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit. It's definitely unique. I think that there's multiple things there. So I did study marketing, but I learned way more about marketing myself than I learned in the classes. That said, I do think it was actually ironically good at giving me a background in business in other areas. So from the finance to accounting to management, some of these different elements. But I think that the thing that actually was the best was the people, was the connections that I made, and it being an incubator for my business. So I was able to be really involved in entrepreneurship there. So I basically became president of the Entrepreneurship Club my freshman year, which is hilarious. And grew that club from a couple dozen people to over 150 like members during my time there. And launched events like you launch where people start a business. It's kind of similar to like 3-day startup or startup weekend.
Yeah.
People start a business in a weekend. And launch that, and that's still going. Like they still run that. So there's some cool legacy things with that I did. But then I had a really good entrepreneurial professor. I also had a good marketing professor as well that was involved in sales, and he was like legitimately a really strong, like on the road, like high-end salesperson, and he taught a lot about consultative selling, and the principles around that and building relationships and selling. His sales class, probably one of the most valuable classes I took. And then also my entrepreneurial advisor, he basically thought it was really dumb that you could earn credits working an internship, but you couldn't earn credits building your own business. So ironically, we even had people that were interns for me earning credits, but I, as the business owner, couldn't earn credits. So
That's a up.
I know, it's so messed up, you know. And so what he did was he created a like graduate level like class for like advanced entrepreneurship, you know, where basically the class was just build your business, you know. And so
That's cool.
so it was, yeah, it was awesome. It was good to have people that really supported me there. And then, you know, so I think that was like one of the things I was able to make it the experience that actually gave me a good launching pad. I do think, like, basically I graduated in 3.5 years. So I did all that and graduated early, which is hilarious. But the last half year was the hardest part. And it was so funny in the home stretch. That was actually the only time I seriously considered dropping out. But then it was like, logically, that doesn't make
Too
sense.
close.
Too
Yeah.
close. Because basically, like, sophomore year was when things really started heating up. And I also technically got that offer. But then after that, I was in the junior year, but I'd also figured out how to massage everything. So my classes would be in these like, you know, Tuesday, Thursday, you know, I had classes that were just entrepreneurship. Like, you know, I was getting credits basically for doing that. You know, I was running the entrepreneurship club. So it was kind of like a fun year, and I was just doing all the things. That final semester though, and the business was really starting to take off. I was like, okay, I need to get out of here and just focus on this. And so then I did, and I graduated, and then you know, and then I just, you know, took things and ran with it. And like a lot of people say, right, like after I graduated, like I didn't realize how much it was holding me back. I think that's also something too, until that final semester, I didn't realize, you know, it's like how much time I really could have, because I never knew anything different. Even when I was doing, so I was doing my, you know, YouTube channel in high school, and then I was doing, you know, both of those businesses in college. I didn't really know how much time you actually have when you're not doing coursework, which is hilarious. So it's kind of funny. But.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings up another thing that I was thinking about earlier, which I'm glad you shared. That is, you're obviously like really intentional with your time, and you manage it really well, and you've done that since high school and even better in college. And once you freed up the time, you know, it gives you all the time, resources, and ability to scale even more. What's been your like mindset or approach, or what are the principles that you follow when it comes to your time management or how you run your day? Because clearly you've been doing that for, you know, maybe a couple decades almost now, of like how you approach your day and how you manage your time. How did you get that skill, and like what is the thought process or mindset that you use around how intentional you are with your time? Because I can see that about you very easily.
Oh, I appreciate that. So I always strive to be, as you know, very, very intentional about it, be very structured and organized on my time. My calendar is set up where everything is blocked into my calendar and very specific. And I also block in if I need time to do specific things, like whether it be film a video, you know, get to-dos done, like actually blocking in time. Because what I realized early on is if you don't block in the time, you're not necessarily going to be able to make that time. So my calendar basically has 0 white space, but that doesn't mean I don't have time to do higher level thinking or get tasks done or check emails or do these different things. It just means that it's actually blocked in and it's color coded. And so I think that, but what I do though is I'm very intentional, you know, where I have a day. Now, right now it's on, because I'm still, I've got big goals and I'm still pushing. So that day is Saturday. I have a day where I don't block something in. I think in the future, I do, you know, aspire to have, you know, a family, you know, one day. And when I have that, it would probably be during the week. And so, you know, but right now it's Saturdays is I have a day where I still work, but I actually don't have any meetings, nothing on there. I think it is important to have a day where you don't have a set agenda. I've also had times in like scaling up my business where that's been during the week. So in the past, that was Wednesdays. I think I would reclaim that because it actually kind of breaks up the week really well. Right now, with where, you know, I'm speaking at more events, I'm doing more podcast interviews. You know, I'm in a push mode right now. So so I think it depends, but I would say you want to have at least a day, whether it's during the week or weekend, where you can just have it really be deep work flex time. And then
Yeah.
the rest of the time, you kind of want to theme things. So like for me, usually Tuesdays would be content, podcasts, things like that. Actually, in fact, we just had you on my podcast on Tuesday. Hence, that's
Yep.
what I do. That said, if I go on other things, I work out whatever time works for this. So this is not on
Yep.
Tuesday, but and then internal calls Mondays, content Tuesdays, and podcasts, things like that. Wednesdays now are similar to Thursdays with more external calls.
Mhm.
And so, or if there's specific team things, and that's, or guest presentations, things like that. That said, in my ideal scenario, I would probably have Wednesday be like a day that's blocked off without calls and deep work.
Yeah.
And I had that like a year ago. It's just in a push season right now. And then Friday is like more of a flex day that gets booked with anything that needs to get done. And then right now, my day that I have that doesn't have a specific agenda, but I get deep work done on is on Saturday. And so that's kind of how I structure, my overall week. And I found that works really well. I like, internal meetings Mondays, content Tuesdays, external calls Thursdays, flex Friday. Normally Wednesday might be, a day to deep work, but these days it's some additional external calls.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down, because I think that I always tell people when I'm coaching work with them, and even just entrepreneurial friends, if they're struggling, I'm like, if for me, I'm not surprised at your answer, because every single part of my life is blocked to my calendar, including like when I plan to go to sleep and like all of that stuff, because I'm so calendar driven.
Yep.
And what I really like about what you shared too, which I've been playing with more, and you've inspired me to go deeper on it, is like really theme my days, because I do focus like morning, afternoon time, blocks, because I know where I do my best work in the morning or the afternoon in calls. But really being structured and intentional about like batching things together is helpful, because the more I grow my business and the more I work with like larger clients, shifting context is more challenging than we realize. And even as entrepreneurs, we're creative, and we can always drive and push ourselves harder, I think, but I don't think we always realize the tax or the toll of like shifting from, if you're doing content creation and then you're doing like a finance call after that, and then you're going to a sales call after that, it's a hard shift of context from one thing to the other. So I think that's brilliant. And then the other thing you shared, where you said like Wednesday, it has been, or like Saturday is now for you, like a deep work kind of more unstructured day. I've made this bet with a few clients I've coached over the years, and I've yet to lose, where I say, you want to grow your business, block off all of Friday for no work calls, no meetings, no nothing, and no like structured deliverables. And they're like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, I guarantee you that if you work 4 days a week, your business will grow faster. And I'm not saying work more hours. I'm saying try to do it in like 32, 35 hours, like in 4 days. And when we create like an intentional compression of time or structure things together, it's amazing the results. Whereas if we give ourselves too much wide open space, then Parkinson's law always applies in my book, anyways. Like, task, work fills to expand the slot you give it, and it's amazing to see what happens when we're like try new time strategies, figure out when we're most creative, and also just really structure things intentionally. So appreciate you sharing that. Not surprising, but I always think it's good to detail that stuff out, because I've been in different stages of business. I'm still growing and scaling, and I've coached people over all different scales. And early on in the journey, we're like, well, how does that big business do it? And I always say, well, they have higher skill in their own personal time management, because that cascades all the way down through your company. Because if you're kind of loose and sloppy with how you're managing your time, even if the team somehow doesn't see your calendar or know what you do, I feel like that stuff like just almost energetically passes into the team too. And so the more structured we can be and the more intentional we are, everything flows a lot better. So appreciate you breaking that down more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to dive into is I feel like they're very interrelated, and we'll see if I'm right. You talk about the ripple effect, that's really your goal, is to make a huge impact. And also, you're now at the point where you're doing more than $1 million a month. So you've scaled significantly in a relatively short time, in my view. How are those things tied together? And then what kind of lessons have you learned scaling to that level? Because there's a massive difference between reaching our first six figures, which is a huge, awesome accomplishment, to reaching our first seven figures, and now you're doing seven figures or more a month. I'm sure you've learned a ton, and I'm curious like how impact is tied into that, and then just what kind of the practical lessons around growth you've been learning.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, the big thing that, I've really seen is that every stage, of growth, there's new opportunities, but there's also new challenges. And those new challenges open up, and you really have to see how to be a better leader, especially as you start to discover that, right? So you got to get the right offer to get to six figures. And then, you got to really get your acquisition and fulfillment down, to get to seven figures. But then 7 to 8 figures, it's really mapping out, okay, how can I empower my team and be a better leader? And now you're building out all the structure and different things. And we've been even in masterminds together, learning about, structure and things from people that have done even beyond that. Right. And then, this next, phase is, okay, well, how can I empower my leaders even more? Because, I need to have leaders that themselves can create leaders, right? It's a level 5 leadership, right? So you look at that, and that's kind of the next, phase. So there's all these different things that you look at. There's new opportunities, there's new challenges. So I think one thing that I've really kind of shifted into is it's not just about, the revenue numbers. The profit's really important as well. Also the, recurring, doing more with recurring. So over the last couple of years, we actually took a little bit of a pause on growing the top line revenue and shifted more on growing our profits and growing our recurring revenue, so that we have more of a solid recurring baseline. And in the past, I would have looked at that, I would say, oh, that's that's bad, that's going backwards or going too slow or whatever. But in reality, that's actually building a stronger business. Businesses with recurring revenue, the same recurring revenue versus non-recurring, are valued like 3 times more. And there's a reason for that. It's really, really interesting. And so we used to do a lot of things as just individual consulting packages for a set number of months, and we'd re-up people. But now it's recurring, focused, and focusing on the LTV. How long can we continue to work with people? But to answer the other question, so that's on the scaling and different lessons that we learn along the way. In terms of the impact, that's something that I've always just really been drawn to. And I think deepening the way that our team is focused on that and aligning our team on that mission has been really valuable, because I genuinely believe when we go out and we help people with their marketing, we're connecting people that have a problem with somebody who has a solution, the business that has a solution, and that we're creating a spark. And by connecting the two of them together, that creates a positive ripple effect of impact. There's all kinds of different examples. Maybe somebody is looking to, get in better shape, or deal with some type of health challenge. If they can get, connected with the right, health coach, nutrition coach, health program that can support them, that's not just going to help them. That's going to help, everybody attached to them, their family. Maybe they're a business owner, their teams, right? So, it's going to create a positive impact. Supporting businesses, or supporting, even things like if we help a roofing company, do a better job and create a roof that's going to last and, kind of withstand, challenges or whatever it is. Maybe it's in a hurricane belt or whatever. Well, that's going to, that's literally protecting a family, and providing a real valuable service. So I think there's these things where you look at it and you say there's a positive impact that can be created, and then a ripple effect from that. So when we go and we help clients with ads get in front of the right people, it's not just us helping them grow their business, which happens, but it's also helping all the people that they impact, and then the people that those people are connected with. And it creates a ripple effect with these levels of magnitude that it's impossible to even really visualize all of the impact that the work that you have can create. And that's what I get really excited about. So our mission is to empower businesses to amplify their impact and create a ripple effect on the world.
I love it, man. That's the longer I've walked the entrepreneurial path, and the more my business has grown, like I first started realizing, wow, like got about 35 people on the team, and they all have families, and so I can multiply that up pretty quick. That every decision I make has impact on hundreds of people, and then exactly what you said. The more I think about like, oh, like we've helped this client, help all these customers, and you're right, like it's infinite, and I love it because that's how you really are helping people. Because if you're helping people show up and really authentically share their message, what value they provide, really show up as themselves in their advertising, I think that's when they attract the right people. And you're right, it's such an amazing effect. And I think that I know that actually with certainty that entrepreneurship and small business owners, we are the driving force of making the world a better place. There's no question. Like you can look at that in history over and over and over, and it's so true. And so I love that that's your mission. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into what you touched on there, because I don't know why I just realized this in the moment, but I realized that you and I grew up in the midst of a new industry being created, because digital marketing is brand new as an industry. Now, marketing and sales principles and human psychology, like none of that's new. But, we've really come of age at the dawn of the internet and then online advertising and all this. And so we've had plenty of conversations about, somebody that buys a laptop and opens up an ad account maybe not be the best marketing person for a business to hire. No offense to the young entrepreneur, but there are going to be some bumps and a lot of learning there. And there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of people that don't really have the heart, of impact and service that you do. So I know like you're coming into a space with business owners where, at least in my experience, we talk to so many of our clients that have been burned and haven't had a good experience and wasted time and money. But your approach is really different, and I actually love it. Even being in the agency space, we have a very similar mindset and heart about how we help our clients. I've heard you speak about how business owners don't have to have an agency. They can jump right into YouTube ads and really get their real authentic message out there. So tell me about how you kind of moved into that more teaching style, and what you believe is like important for business owners to be aware of, and then go a little bit deeper on kind of what the service looks like and how people can work with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so one thing that, I've kind of found is, and there's different ways to do it. And you and I both know, like there's a lot of, whether it be agencies or people teaching different strategies that just, unfortunately, they're not, they don't always have the best interest in mind of the
Yeah.
clients and different people. And so I think there's amazing agencies, and I know you've really structured yourself on the agency side, and we've had great conversations around that. And also, we have businesses like mine, which is more of a hybrid model. So it's kind of like a hybrid between, elements that an agency might have, but also training and coaching and really hands-on helping our clients. And so what I found is there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that, have learned how to do Facebook ads, for instance. But those Facebook ads might not be getting them the results that they want anymore, for various different reasons. Maybe they can't quite scale them, or they're getting results, but they're worried about it getting shut down. They're worried about putting all their eggs in one basket. And so, there's either entrepreneurs that have learned that themselves, or they have a team member that's learned those ads. They have somebody in charge of their ads or their marketing. And there's not really a great solution for those people that are looking to expand, because mostly out there are, agencies that can kind of full stack and do things. And for the right people, it's amazing. And I know you've got incredible agency and services that you provide. But what we found is there was this opening space in the market for two things. One, somebody to train either entrepreneurs, especially at an earlier stage, that are kind of in an early stage of scaling up, that are still involved in the ads themselves, or businesses that have an internal media buyer or marketing person, and they're not necessarily looking for a full-blown agency, but they're looking to learn a new platform that's going to be able to get them even better results. That's where we come in. And so what we can do is we've got a hybrid process where, we'll start by like kind of mapping out an overall game plan and strategy for implementing YouTube ads in their business, customized, based on their business. We want to understand, who's your ideal client, what do your funnels look like right now, what's working, what's not working on your ads, existing ads. And then we'll map out a strategy. We'll then write the YouTube ad scripts for our clients. We got copywriters on our team that will write like hook, educate, call to action. Again, putting the value in the ad, to crafting that winning ad. When we can edit it for clients. So again, there's done for you elements. And then when it comes to launching the ad, there's different ways that we do it. So we can either do kind of more of like, more of a done for you style launch and then train them on how to do it. Or we could do a one-on-one, launch where they're doing it, but we're here to support them with it. So there's different ways. And then the ongoing support, We've got one-on-one support, where they get weekly one-on-one calls with our team where we can help them optimize and scale their ads, and either meet with, again, some entrepreneurs are either at a stage or they just love running the ads.
Yeah.
But also like for instance, we've got one of our clients, Ryan Kelly, and he does piano by picture. So he basically, teaches people how to play piano, learning it an easier way with pictures. He's got thousands and thousands of members on a $39 a month membership, which is crazy. And we helped him scale his YouTube ads up to over $80,000 to $100,000 a month on YouTube, quite profitably. And he just loves running the ads. He runs the Facebook ads himself, and he likes running the YouTube ads. And it's so funny, but he just loves it. And so some people love it. Other people, they might have an internal media buyer or internal marketing person. And then for some clients, we do have the ability to run ads done for you for some clients now. We didn't always have that at one, but we've kind of added that in because I've been asked enough times to do it. And for the right people, I'm willing to do that. And then we also have other elements that we support with. So we'll also coach people on YouTube channel growth. We'll coach people on omnipresent retargeting. So YouTube ads are our primary platform to bring people in, but I'm a believer you should be retargeting everywhere. You have the lead, you want to show up everywhere. And then, and some other strategies too. And then I also do one of my favorite calls every month. I'll do like a high level, kind of Q&A hot seat call with all of our clients, and just jam. It's like a mastermind, mastermind, and so all of that as well.
That's very cool. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. There's what I love about it is there's when you have the expertise and you put the time in and you really have the skill with yourself and your team, there's so many creative ways to serve the market. Like you mentioned, the piano teacher, super accessible, thousands of members. Clearly that works. And just like, I know we could both go out and find that, a piano teacher that's probably charging hundreds of dollars an hour, right? And they're like, have a very small, core set of people they work with. But when you can identify that gap in the market and figure out what people want or what the other service providers have overlooked, there's always huge opportunity there. It's been so much fun to just see you learn and grow and do everything you're doing. And I love your mission, Aleric. So it's always awesome to talk with you, and your enthusiasm is amazing too. I can just tell how passionate you are about helping people really make that impact.
Thank you.
So, yeah, this has been an absolute blast. We'll definitely have you back. Where's the easiest place for people to find out about the company and follow you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So of course, I've got a lot of content on YouTube, so you can just look up Aleric Heck on YouTube. But I do have a free gift for everybody that's listening or watching. I've got a 19-page YouTube ad strategy PDF. It breaks down step by step. So we kind of alluded to some of the different strategy elements, but you can go to adoutreach.com/gift. That's adoutreach.com/GIFT, adoutreach.com/gift, and you get the 19-page YouTube ad strategy PDF. And if you want to learn about how we can support you, you can just go to adoutreach.com/apply to book a strategy call.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all those links down below. And as always, it's always a blast to hang out with you, Aleric. Thanks for the time today and just sharing your story and your expertise, man.
Thanks so much, Gabe. I appreciate it.